Hello and welcome to today's edition of Route 664, The Road to Human Kindness. I want you to know that I care about you out there and we're doing things to help you live a better life. In fact, this morning, the personal journal of the Wall Street Journal, it has an article that says, yes, you can boost your optimism. Psychologists believe that a positive outlook is a style of thinking. It just needs practice. So how do you practice optimism and a positive outlook? One of the things that I think is most important is your financial well-being. I think financial well-being has a lot to do with a positive outlook. And I hope you understand the philosophy behind the entire program of Endow America Network Foundation and Socials at Charity and Route 664 in general. We're really about love, love for yourself and love for the community. And that's what you do when you use these fantastic vehicles that are available to you. I can see that a lot of people don't know how to use them, and I hope that you're going to be able to adjust your own finances to see whether or not this type of program can work for you. Can it help you endow yourself and then endow the community? Can it help you help yourself to make your life better by having more income when you need it in order to do the things that you want to do? One of the things that we do in the beginning of any conferences with a client like you, we would ask you about your budget. And I have to tell you a story about one of my earlier clients. Was a very well-known attorney, and he earned a lot of money. And when I went to see him, the first thing that we do is we establish a budget. We want to know what is your budget? What do you live on? What does it cost you to live? And what does it cost you to live in the style that you want to live in? The budget, a lot of people think that you might think that budgets are fixed, that you can't move from them, that they're, a control mechanism, but they're really not. A budget is a guideline to let us know what the needs are. So when I asked this attorney, I said, what does it cost you to live? And this is about 20 years ago. So the numbers are a little different. But at that time, he said, it cost me about $6,000 a month to live. I said, okay, great. So we have a budget worksheet that we use to actually get the information so we can help you determine what the actual expenses are. We can trigger your memory to include the things that are important to you. And when I went through the budget worksheet with the attorney, it turns out he was spending a lot more. And I asked him a question when he said $6,000 a month. I said, so what do you earn? He says, I earn $400,000 a year. I said, well, that's great. So you must be saving at least $200,000 a year. He says, no, I'm not saving anything. I said, why is that? He says, I guess I'm spending everything. And we went over the budget. His budget was $20,000 a month, not $6,000 a month. But that included everything. That included what he spent on vacations. That included what taxes would be. It included what retirement plan might cost. It included funding for the future. So there's a lot of other costs in that budget analysis that you might not think or might not remember. And so the budget worksheet is one of the tools that we use in order to focus you on what it is that you need. And once we know what your income needs are today, we can kind of look forward and see what your income needs are in the future. We've kind of brought things down for you to a simple level where you might be able to analyze your own situation based on 5 financial hazards that we've identified. Those financial hazards are the same for everybody. It doesn't make any difference how wealthy you are. It doesn't make any difference what your net worth is. The same 5 financial hazards can affect you. And I think we need to define for you what a financial hazard is. The financial hazards are things that can make your life turn around and affect your financial well-being in such a way as to ruin your optimism, to ruin your self-confidence going forward, to ruin your confidence over money going forward. And those financial hazards, as I say, can affect anybody. One of them is dying too soon. That's a significant financial hazard to the people that are relying on you and who need to have you as a breadwinner, or you're the main person in the financial world of those individuals. So dying too soon can be an impact on the people that you leave behind. Obviously, it's an impact on you. But the second one is getting disabled and the cost of medical care. We know what that is involved. You may be experiencing it. You may know somebody who's been hospitalized who didn't have the proper insurance or whatever. The costs are astronomical to take care of some of the medical needs. And then there's also the loss of income. If you're sick for a long time or you're disabled in an accident, you are unable to work. So your income is gone. And income is the lifeblood of everything. So that's the second financial hazard. The third financial hazard is a little bit different. It's a third party hazard, which is comes about if you have liability. If you're negligent, if you injure somebody, you damage their property, you're liable for that. And that is accidental. That's not something you have control over. That could happen at any time. And that liability is an exposure. Somebody suing you, you could accumulate all the assets in the world, but when somebody comes after you because you've damaged them and they're suing you for multi-millions of dollars, that's a way to lose your financial well-being. You can be hurt financially. That's another financial hazard. Also, you own property. So if you own property and the property gets destroyed in a storm, that's a financial hazard. You've lost a very valuable piece of property. Now, those four are easily dealt with because you can insure against them. They're not financial hazards that are just left to you to decide how you can handle those, because people have dealt with them before. So you have an opportunity to insure against those. You can buy life insurance, you can buy disability insurance, you can buy medical insurance, you can buy homeowners insurance to protect against the liability and the loss of property, automobile insurance for liability coverage. All of those things are insurable. The fifth hazard is the hazard that is most difficult for most people, and probably for you too. You might be wondering, what is that fifth hazard? And that fifth hazard is living too long. Living too long is only a problem if you run out of money. And I think that you, if you're like most people, are going to wonder, what is my life expectancy? How long am I going to need money for? And that's one of the questions that I ask when I start working with somebody who wants to do this kind of planning. I ask them, at what age do you expect to die? It's a startling question for a lot of people, but everybody gives me an answer. And that answer generally evolves from family experience, somebody in the family. I was once making a presentation to a group of people, and I asked that question. I tell them, take out a piece of paper and a pencil, and I want you to write down the age at which you expect to die. And everybody wrote down, and there's a guy sitting in the front row, one of the people that I was talking to, and he was actually hyperventilating. I said, what's the matter? I said, what'd you write down? He says, 46. I said, how old are you? He said, 45. And he said, I never really thought about that until just now. I never realized that was a mindset. And I said, how did you get to that? He said, my father died at 46, my uncle died at 46, and his brother, my sister's kid died at 46. And it's just a number that I have in my head. I said, okay, can you change that mindset? Yes, you can. If you think about it and you actually take time to think about that process, you can extend your life. He was also living his life that way. He was overweight, he smoked. And so you wonder about that mindset of the time frame. But living too long only becomes a problem if the assets are so diminished that you can't live longer. In fact, they say there are 3 reasons why people die, psychological reasons. 1 is that they run out of money. 2 is they run out of family and friends. And 3, that they run out of purpose. So our objective here with this program is to help you find a way to get confidence over money, and understand the process that you can use to enable you to solve the problem of living too long. And that really has to do with having income for your lifetime and having adequate income for your lifetime. So living too long is the hazard of retirement. The actually retirement in itself is a hazard. Um, I believe in my own work scenario, I don't want to retire. I like doing what I'm doing so I can do it forever. As long as I like what I'm doing, I can do it forever. And that's working at your genius. And that's if you remember the pyramid that we talked about in prior shows, the top of the pyramid was getting to your genius, but you have to have confidence over money, confidence over your time, confidence over relationships, and then you become more spiritual because you have the ability to share yourself and your love for the community, and that's where the love comes in. Working at your genius is loving yourself because it's something that you love to do and something you can do forever, and also working at your genius when you have confidence over money is a lot easier and it's a lot better for you overall. So how can I help you get confidence over money through income generation to create more income? Well, that was the genius of Congress. In 1969, when they passed they passed into law Section 664 of the tax code and two other sections as well. They had in mind that people would need a way to create more income for themselves. And they combined that with income for the community. And if we had done this back in 1969, if we actually started from 1969 till now, they would have accomplished what we think is the most important objective. We believe that government should not be supporting non-governmental organizations. And in fact, our $30 trillion debt is in most part, or in a good part, due to governmental spending that goes beyond the scope of what government should be spending on. And that means if a government is supporting non-governmental organizations, that's bad economics and bad politics, and it doesn't work. You have to have a way of supporting the NGOs, the non-governmental organizations. And that's what Congress did. They said, we want to find a way to help support non-governmental organizations without the government being involved. So they created these sections of the tax code. Unfortunately, over the last 50 years, they've done nothing to let people know about them. Now, we all know what a 401k is, and we know what Section 529 is. A lot of people use 401ks because it's done for them, for their employers. 529s, people know about them if they want to educate their children. Why not Section 664? So 50 years have passed. And in that 50 years, if we had used these devices the way that they were created, we would have endowment in the non-governmental organizations, in the NGOs. They would have been endowed by this time to be able to support themselves from endowment, but it was never done. So that's what our objective is. Our objective is to take this over 50-year-old, these principles that they created over 50 years ago in the tax code, and make them known to you now, because you can't use something that you don't know about. I'm going to brainwash you. I want to brainwash you about Section 664 and Social Security. We call it Social Security because it's very similar to Social Security, except the charity is involved. What Congress said is if you do something for charity when you die, we'll give you lower taxes while you're alive. Most people don't know that that bargain even exists. And they don't know that it produces income. Income that is usable for your lifetime. And there are ways to produce income that will support others as well going forward. It just depends on what your situation is. It depends on where you are in your own financial world. So you'll be happy to know that more and more people are utilizing this as we're moving forward, and we are building more endowment. And the way that that's happening is we are educating more financial planners so that financial planners can give you the nuances that are part of these sections of the tax code. Those nuances are very important because they have a bearing on how successful the program will be in terms of your own situation. And it can only be based on your situation. That's your financial fingerprint. And all of us have different financial fingerprints. So working with a financial advisor that does the things for you that you need to know will help you get through the process of these charitable vehicles and how they can help you create endowment for yourself and then endowment for the community. They just want to focus on this whiteboard for a second. A good financial advisor will do these three, will find out these three things from you because the starting point is always the budget. What does it cost you to live? And we have a very detailed budget analysis sheet, which I'm happy to share with you. If you text me at 305 773 305 773 5167. If you text me the word budget, I will make sure that I send it back to you so you can use it for your own purposes. The budget worksheet is about 4 pages, but it's all inclusive and it will help you in your own planning against living too long. It's a very important piece that I want you to get out of this session today. The budget worksheet tells you where you are today in your spending. And that also includes, by the way, saving and including retirement planning. So when we talk about budget again, it's all encompassing. It's what's necessary for you to be able to have more confidence, to have more optimism. Second thing is your financial balance sheet. Now, you may not know how to do a financial balance sheet, but basically it's assets and liabilities to find out what your net worth is. People who have huge net worths are sometimes so much more complicated that they don't know what their budget is. They don't have any clue what it costs them to spend. I was with a gentleman a couple of weeks back, and that was the first question I asked him. I said, what is it that we are trying to fund going forward? Because he's in the process of trying to liquidate us. He has a succession plan for his businesses, and he's got multiple number of businesses that are all valuable, and he doesn't really know what direction to go in. I mean, he's got a lot of assets that makes everything confusing. And I tried to simplify it for him by saying, the main thing we need to know for you to go into a succession plan is, what do we need to fund for you going forward into the future? What is it going to cost us to fund all of your future expenses? In order to do that, I need to know what your current expenses really are. What is it that you spend? And again, this is not a limitation. This is an explanation of where you are. So he said to me, he says, I spend $1 million a year. I said, okay, how did you get to that? He says, I don't know. That's what I've always thought. I said, all right. How do we find out exactly what that is? And I went back to the very simple, basic thing, the budget worksheet. Going through the budget worksheet, we can see exactly what he was spending money on and what would be necessary to continue to spend money on. And then we also asked him, the balance sheet kind of becomes a secondary issue. The balance sheet tells us what we have to fund that future budget, but there's also cash needs in there. And those cash needs are, well, you have kids. What do you want to give? What do you want to give to your children? What do you want to give to your children? Have you thought about that? What is it that you actually want to do for them? You can define that. You can say, I want them to make sure they go to college. I want to make sure my kids have a house. I want to make sure they can go into business. I want to make sure that if they have a problem child, they can deal with a problem child. Everything depends on what it is that you think you want to do for your children. And all of that can be established in a number, in a financial number, in a dollar number. And so we can put aside the cash need needs, ask what we're going to use for the budget and the cash needs, and see what's left. Once we see what's left, we know that there's the potential for income production from assets that will be left to endow charity. And that's one way of using these, that's one way that you can use these charitable vehicles. You might like the Children's Hospital as your ultimate beneficiary. You might not have anybody that you think about right now as your ultimate charitable beneficiary. You can always change the ultimate beneficiaries of the charitable remainder. But while you're alive, you also have control over how you have that money invested, because you become the trustee of it. You also become the income beneficiary of it. And when you create that device, you create a tax-favored entity, which is one where you can get a tax deduction for putting cash in and where you can get tax-free growth while it's inside. And that's a very important aspect of being prepared for living the hazard of living too long. Because one of the things that happens, and one of the things that we find, not in the ultra wealthy, we're talking about folks like you and me, where we're in the middle class, but we have assets and we want to maximize those assets and we want to maximize the income that they produce. In order to do that, eliminating tax works. Getting rid of the tax that you'd have to pay on a capital gain, getting rid of the tax that you'd have to pay while it grows inside a retirement device. All of those things are beneficial and make it easier to create more income from the assets that you have. So it's very economical, and it works best when the individual, when you as an individual understand that you're endowing both things, and that's love of yourself, love of your community. We believe that financial literacy also includes the love of charity, and the love of charity. It's hard to. How do you love charity? Well, we got charity. We've got a character charity, and we want you to love charity. And charity has powers that come from wizards, and so I want you to see charity in action. It was a dark and stormy day in Cape City on the East Coast as Charity made her way to Washington, D.C. Once again, it seemed like the whole of America was covered in a thick, colorless cloud of black and white, as gloomy as imaginably possible. She noticed a mob of young people gathered together on a street corner as a sinister voice emanated from the center.
Guys and girls and guys, gather round and feast your eyes. Who's the man who always has a plan whenever you need to fan the flames that make you fly like Peter Pan? The Trixie Man can. What's my plan then, man? The answer lies with my special new magic powder I like to call Trixie Dust. One whiff of this stuff and all your fears will disappear. So lend me your ears and get over here.
Charity's sense of telepathy was suddenly activated and was going crazy. In the crowd, she felt mixed feelings of confusion, fear, desperation, and a desire to escape. She also felt something dark coming from the so-called Trixie Man. Whoever he is, she thought, he's up to no good.
Trixie Dust, huh? Sounds like a cheap knockoff of a children's fairy tale. These kids don't need any of your tricks, Trixie Man.
What's this? Another lost little girl who's come to play? Perhaps you'd like a little sampled whiff. I have a bag full of many tricks.
The Trixie Man reached into his bag and pulled out a handful of blue powder, which he then blew into the crowd with a single breath. The blue cloud filling the area and turning the crowd into mindless robots for Trixie Man's control. Charity sensed the danger and immediately shielded herself with a musical shield ray, clearly upset by how Trixie Man sought to exploit the youth of Cape City.
Looks like it's time to introduce a little social security in this town.
Social security? How do you think I got here? That river has been running dry for a long time, my dear, and this town is in need of some new sugar. Uncle Sam can't provide much more, but the Trixie Man can.
No, he most certainly cannot and will not.
Charity then began to use her magical voice to summon her musical powers that sent a shockwave of color to the entire city in an instant. The wave of kindness changed everyone it touched into a charitable giver, including Trixie Man himself. Even the Trixie dust suddenly turned into real candy.
No! What have you done? I had a real good thing going here. And why do I feel so wonderful and charitable?
And that's the power of philanthropy, the love of humanity in your heart.
How did you do it, though? How did you manage to use philanthropy to save the city?
I told you, through a trusty little tool I like to call social security. It's a concept that comes to us through Route 664, the road to human kindness. The concept is pretty straightforward. If you give to charity, the government rewards you by reducing your taxes. But what if you can create your own charitable giving trust or income fund where you can not only support the charity of your choice, you'll also create a steady stream of income that has the potential to grow every year. At the end of your life, the remaining money you accumulated goes to the philanthropy you previously chose, which enables them to stop relying on Uncle Sam, allowing them to stand and function on their own financial endowment. America dishes out $1 trillion in charity annually and is nearly $30 trillion in debt. So imagine if each and every one of the 328 million American citizens chose to open a Social Security account along with Social Security. We can both reduce our own taxes and get more income, as well as pay off $28 trillion of our debt by 2050.
Fascinating. So through social security, we can financially endow America by building a network foundation of charitable givers. We'd be effectively taking that responsibility out of the hands of the government and restoring it to the people.
Exactly. Now he's getting it.
Who can I speak to so I can learn more?
You can speak to one of our professional philanthropic advisors by visiting socialsecurity.org. And like us on Facebook at Social Security. Tune in to our weekly webcast, Route 664, The Road to Human Kindness, and our brand spanking new 664 Radio. I'm glad you finally came around, Trixie Man.
Oh no, my dear. Please don't call me Trixie Man anymore. Instead, I wish to be called the Philanthropist. And as my first heroic act, I would like to give you some advice. If you really want to save America, find the Collector.
The Collector?
Yes, the Collector looms like a shadow behind the scenes of every problem in America. Who do you think paid me to drain the funds out of this town? He and his minions influence Americans to spend, spend, and spend so that he can collect, and collect. You'll find him and his henchmen up in our nation's capital, infiltrating the highest levels.
Well, this sounds like a job for Social Security.
It looks like Charity's on her way to Washington, and she's got her work cut out for her. But she won't be going it alone. No, she'll have the help of her 3 trustees, Chigaro, Cratius, and Pithecus. To be continued only on the next all-new adventures of Charity and the Trustees. So there you go. That's Charity, and we can all fall in love with Charity and follow her lead. Make the world a better place. Make sure you tune into Route 664 Radio. That's route664radio.org. And listen to great music and also to the interviews that we've done. Pardon?
It's just route664.org.
It's just route664.org, not route664radio.org. Route 66. Route664.org. All right. This was a very intense section. I'm happy to talk to you every day and every week whenever you want. Make sure you text me for that budget. We'll talk to you next week. Take care. Bye.